And I want to address your question about interviewing people and studying people who are unlike you. Um, that's come up in some interesting ways too. I think it was most prominent when I interviewed the very low income fathers of color. And right before I got on the call with you, Dr. Dyer, I was editing the appendix in my book. I'm looking at book page proofs. And I actually write a whole methodological appendix on this. So it was really fortuitous when I did that whole research project for all the interviews with fathers, at least, I was visibly pregnant with my daughter. And so I found that was actually a way of kind of navigating that social distance, especially because it was my first child. I really positioned the fathers as more experienced parents who could give me parenting advice that they were qualified to give. And it really aligned with a lot of what I was trying to write about and what I found in the interviews, which is these men were looking for really anything, anybody, any context where they were recognized first and foremost as parents and not as other stigmatized statuses that they're so often labeled, right? Ex-convict, deadbeat, dropout, all of these really stigmatizing, horrible labels that other people apply to them. And so I think it was really powerful that, especially, and I mean, I was pretty visibly pregnant and the fathers wanted to comment on it constantly. And I would write my field notes after the interview. And I thought, this keeps coming up about the pregnancy. They want to talk about this pregnancy. And I get it. And I write about, pregnant bodies, they're very visible. People like to talk about them and touch them and give advice about them. And so I thought, I need to use this. Like, is there a way to use this as a way of, and I've written a lot about kind of that positionality and what does it mean to do field work as a pregnant person and as a pregnant body and how you're treated differently. But I think in that one particular case, it was a way of shrinking some of that social distance because we related to each other as parents. And then in the follow-up project about diapers, I thought, just use that. I think really coming out of this very positivist tradition, there's this, I think, tendency to think of the researchers as a very objective, kind of disembodied, entity. And I know we're supposed to be objective, and I'm not saying that, but I think too, it really behooves us to think of ourselves as situated subjects, getting back to that positionality idea, that we always bring all of those characteristics into the research encounter, whether it's our gender or our perceived gender, or our race or our age or our class status, or our pregnancies or whatever, embodied social statuses that we have. And there's no way that those are not going to affect the research encounter. And I know a lot has been written about trying to kind of minimize the impact of those social characteristics on the research encounter. And I've always taken the perspective that you can't. So I think you just have to be mindful of how your gender, your age, your race, other characteristics are affecting how your respondents might perceive you. And just be really mindful as you're writing up your results, because I don't know what it would have been, but I think I certainly would have gotten different data if I had been a Black man interviewing these fathers. I think and there's all these quotes, some I think the most important quotes from that project, where the fathers would say, and one I remember, and I call the respondent Michael, he goes, "You, white lady, you have to imagine what it's like to wake up every day in this skin and to go outside your house and try to do what you're supposed to do right by your kids." He goes, "You're never going to have it as hard as I am." And I remember that quote, and I quote quite a bit from that interview because I thought, this is actually one of the main things driving my research questions, right? How is someone like me, who does embody all of kind of the status markers of good parenthood, whiteness, affluence, femininity, right? I walk out my door and people assume I'm a good parent, whether or not, my daughter's diaper, as it did many times, got as full as it could possibly get. And I'm not worried about CPS. I'm not worried about CPS coming and taking my daughter because I'm given the benefit of the doubt about my parenting. Whereas all the parents that I've interviewed, and just having to be in those encounters and really admit, right? Like, they're going to have, I think this gets back to your question too, about the importance of studying populations that are not white, middle class. Because my lived experience of being a parent, I'm always given the benefit of the doubt. But these parents aren't. So talking to, for example, Black mothers who they're not out in public with the child's full diaper because they're afraid the moment they are, someone's going to call CPS. And, you know, knowing all the research on the child welfare system, it's very racialized. And we know that Black children are removed from homes and put into the foster system at much higher rates. And so, you know, these Black mothers and Black fathers are responding to very real structural inequities. And so I think there's really powerful ways that we can use those considerations of positionality to mine the data and the research encounter for these really powerful findings of how inequalities, you know, shape very different experiences of parenting.
Yeah, yeah.